In the shadowed corners of history, places so remote and forgotten that their very names have been erased, lies a family whose story is never spoken aloud. Bound by blood, bound by silence, their legacy has been carefully concealed behind locked doors, thick walls, and generations of whispered warnings. For centuries, their secrets have been guarded with fierce loyalty, hidden away from the world, cloaked in darkness. Tonight, we peel back the veil on the most secretive inbred family in history, a lineage woven with fear, isolation, and unspoken truths. What truths have they buried so deep? What horrors linger beneath their closed gates? And why must this silence be preserved at all costs? Listen closely, for in the stillness, in the silence, the past is calling. In the deep folds of rural America, far from the noise of cities and the eyes of history, there exists a family cloaked not just in mystery, but in a legacy that few dare to confront. For generations, this family has lived isolated from the world, locked away in a web of blood ties so tightly woven that it has become their prison, a cage forged by their own heritage. Their story is not found in history books or public records. Instead, it survives only in whispers, stories passed in hushed tones, never spoken aloud and rarely believed. This is a lineage erased by time, a name wiped from census records, their existence denied by neighbors and officials alike. A silence so profound it has become the family's shield and their curse. Tonight, we embark on a journey into this shadowed lineage, tracing the roots of silence that have spanned centuries, uncovering the cost of a legacy forged in secrecy, fear, and isolation. What shadows lurk behind the walls of their forgotten homestead? What price has been paid for generations bound by blood alone? As we peel back the layers of silence, we will witness a truth too unsettling for most to face. To understand how this family's dark legacy took root, we must travel back nearly 2 centuries, to a time when the land was wild and unforgiving, and survival depended on retreating from the eyes of the world. Historical documents trace this family's origins to early settlers who fled persecution, poverty, and the harsh judgments of society. Seeking refuge, they retreated deep into the wilderness, remote, isolated valleys where no outsiders dared to venture. These pioneers sought to preserve not only their way of life but their bloodline. And so, they built their homes far from prying eyes, where the laws of the outside world seemed to hold no sway. But these forests and hills did more than conceal, they trapped. Generations of descendants would be born into this isolated existence, their lives entwined by necessity, fear, and a growing network of intermarriage that tightened like a noose. Census records from the late 1800s and early 1900s reveal a disturbing pattern, the same surnames repeated again and again. Marriages within the family weren't simply tradition, they were survival. Handwritten family trees, fragile and yellowed with age, show branches that loop back onto themselves. Cousins married cousins, second cousins. Siblings separated by circumstance but united by blood. It was a web spun over decades, a web designed to keep their lineage pure and unbroken. Local folklore speaks of an unbreakable oath, passed down from one generation to the next, a vow to protect the bloodline at all costs. This was not just a family secret. It was a sacred pact. And the price of breaking this oath was exile, or worse. Rare interviews with the eldest residents of the region, those still willing to speak, paint a haunting picture. They recount children born with visible deformities or mental afflictions, hidden away from outsiders, kept out of sight as if their very existence threatened the fragile illusion of normalcy. Some families reportedly vanished without explanation, whispered away in the dead of night, their fates swallowed by silence. Community chose silence over help, fear over compassion, isolation over intervention. One elderly man, whose voice trembles with a lifetime of fear and regret, recalls how even local doctors refused to intervene. Their reports vanished or dismissed. The family secret was fiercely protected, and outsiders learned quickly that some questions were best left unasked. This isolation fostered a closed world where loyalty was demanded, and betrayal was met with swift and cruel consequences. In this hidden enclave, silence was not only a shield, it was a weapon. The veil of silence surrounding this family began to lift when an independent researcher, working far from the public eye, quietly commissioned a genetic study unlike any before. What they found was disturbing, alarmingly high levels of inbreeding that stretched back generations, a tangled web of shared ancestry that had been concealed beneath layers of secrecy. The biological consequences were devastating. Rare genetic disorders, once dismissed as mere coincidence or bad luck, were in fact widespread. Developmental delays, cognitive impairments, and physical deformities appeared with unsettling frequency. Mortality rates within the family far exceeded regional averages. Infants born into fragile health, many never reaching their first birthday. Mental health struggles, long whispered about but never addressed openly, were endemic, hidden behind closed doors. For decades, these realities were ignored or hidden, protected by the family's code of silence. But the genetic study was only the beginning. Whispers began to surface of something far darker, secret ceremonies and rituals conducted under the cover of night, meant to preserve purity within the bloodline. The study hinted at these practices, but it was a whistleblower who broke the silence. An individual, whose identity remains protected, came forward with decades-old documents, journals, and first-hand testimonies, a trove of evidence that exposed a social system ruled not just by blood, but by fear. Fear of outsiders, fear of betrayal, fear of the consequences of breaking an unspoken, but brutally enforced code. These rituals were more than superstition. They were mechanisms of control. Testimonies describe gatherings in abandoned churches and hidden groves where cryptic symbols were drawn and oaths sworn in whispered voices. Punishments for defiance ranged from social exile to violent intimidation, ensuring loyalty above all else. The family's insularity was maintained not by choice alone, but by a deeply ingrained system of brutal enforcement, one that ensured the legacy of silence would endure. This revelation reframes everything. This is not simply a tragic story of genetics or isolation. It is a story of power, the power to shape lives and histories through fear and secrecy, a legacy maintained in the shadows, where the truth is a dangerous weapon and silence is the only protection. The roots of this family's isolation reach far deeper than mere geography or circumstance. They are entwined with ancient promises, ancestral pacts passed down through whispered words and guarded rites, binding generations to a single, unyielding purpose: to keep the bloodline pure. These were not simple family traditions but solemn, unbreakable vows, etched into the very fabric of their existence. Oral histories, passed in secret, tell of curses spoken against those who dared to break the code, curses that would bring ruin, exile, or even death. Within the nearby town archives, untouched for decades and coated in thick layers of dust, lie records of disappearances and deaths that were never reported to the outside world. Documents bearing headlines like "Vanished Without Trace" or "Unexplained Deaths" puzzle locals, tell a chilling story of lives snuffed out quietly, as if swallowed by the surrounding wilderness. Local eyewitnesses speak of strange, unsettling events deep in the forest on moonless nights. They describe eerie gatherings where shadowed figures move silently through the mist, barely discernible among the gnarled trunks of ancient trees. Strange chants echo faintly low, guttural sounds that seem to rise from the earth itself, as if the forest itself breathes with a dark rhythm. Some who stumbled upon these gatherings reported an overwhelming feeling of dread, a sensation that the woods were alive, watching and waiting. These accounts were often dismissed as folklore, the ramblings of frightened minds, but the persistence of these stories, unchanged over decades, suggests a chilling truth. some secrets refuse to die. The forest, with its thick fog and tangled roots, acts as both guardian and prison, hiding the family's darkest rituals and protecting their legacy of silence. The deeper we delve, the clearer it becomes that this isolation is no accident. It is a deliberate, brutal enforcement of an ancient code, a social order maintained through fear and shadow. Each disappearance, each whispered story is a thread in a tapestry woven with menace and mystery. In the dark heart of this wilderness, beneath the dense canopy where sunlight barely reaches, the past lives on, a haunting reminder that the legacy of this family is far from over. Behind the thick veil of secrecy that enveloped this family was a chilling pattern, one that those who dared to step inside their world began to uncover only slowly. Piece by piece, medical personnel who served the family, doctors and nurses, often bound by duty and silence, recount a history of neglect and concealment. Children were born with deformities, twisted limbs, fragile bones, or cognitive impairments that rendered them vulnerable and dependent. Yet these children rarely saw the light of day outside their homes. Their conditions were considered a family shame, an unspoken mark that must never be displayed to outsiders. Some were quietly hidden away, confined to dim rooms or remote outbuildings, their cries muffled, their existence a secret guarded with fierce protectiveness. Others simply disappeared. Families vanished without explanation, leaving behind empty homes and unanswered questions. Local authorities, when alerted or suspicious, often found themselves stonewalled by an impenetrable wall of silence. Records of investigations were mysteriously lost or erased, reports classified or conveniently misplaced. Attempts by state officials to intervene were met not with confrontation, but with a silent resistance. The power of a community bound by an unbreakable pact. This pact, stronger than law or governance, was enforced by loyalty and fear. Outsiders quickly learned that probing too deeply invited consequences, social ostracism, intimidation, and sometimes violence. The family wielded silence as their most potent weapon, a fortress against exposure. It was a legacy preserved not by ignorance, but by deliberate and calculated action. As decades passed, abandoned rural clinics stood as haunting monuments to this silence, empty corridors echoing with the ghosts of the unseen and unheard. In decaying school buildings, overturned desks and dust-covered textbooks speak of interrupted childhoods and lost futures. Faded medical reports, scrawled with indecipherable handwriting and ominous terminology, tell stories of diagnoses unspoken and treatments withheld. Each document, each silent hallway, each vanished child adds another layer to the chilling truth. This was a family hiding not only from the world, but from itself. The cost of their legacy is measured not just in bloodlines, but in lives lost to the shadows, lives sacrificed to keep a secret that would not be spoken. This family story is not merely a tragic echo of the past. It is a living, breathing legacy that persists into the digital age. In recent years, a new generation has emerged from the shadows, a generation that embraces their heritage with a fierce, almost defiant pride. Social media platforms, often a window into the world's private corners, reveal glimpses of this bloodline's modern presence. Anonymous posts, photographs, and cryptic messages appear boasting of their pure blood, celebrating a heritage shrouded in secrecy. Yet beneath this defiant exterior lies a complex web of repression and denial. Recently uncovered documents, smuggled out by a whistleblower whose identity remains protected, expose the existence of a secret society within the family, a clandestine group known only as the Keepers. This society enforces the purity of the bloodline with rituals as old as the family itself, wielding fear and loyalty as their most potent tools. Physical evidence of their presence is etched into the landscape itself. Close examination of the surrounding wilderness reveals cryptic symbols carved deeply into tree bark, weathered stone walls, and abandoned buildings, marks of belonging and warnings to outsiders. These symbols are not mere graffiti. They are sigils of power, coded messages binding the members together across generations. More chilling are the reports of shadowed ceremonies held and forgotten, churches long since abandoned by the wider community. Inside these crumbling sanctuaries, stained glass windows shattered by time cast fractured light onto worn pews and cracked altars. Testimonies from those rare few who have glimpsed these gatherings speak of solemn rituals, chants and languages lost to time, offerings made in silence, and oaths sworn beneath flickering candlelight. The purpose of these ceremonies remains unclear to outsiders, but their intent is unmistakable: to perpetuate a legacy, to keep the bloodline pure, and to maintain control. Keepers are not just guardians of tradition, they are enforcers of a shadowed order, whose reach extends far beyond the family home. This revelation shatters the illusion that this family story is confined to forgotten history. That is a living narrative, one that continues to shape identities, enforce loyalties, and silence dissent. In the digital age, where anonymity breeds both courage and defiance, the family's legacy stands at a precarious crossroads between exposure and concealment, rebellion and control. What price will the next generation pay for the secrets they inherit? And how long can a legacy of silence endure in a world increasingly unwilling to forget? In recent years, the fragile veil of silence that once shielded this family has begun to fray, torn apart by the quiet revolution of technology and accessible genetic testing. Affordable DNA kits, once a novelty, have become a powerful tool, exposing truths long buried beneath layers of secrecy and denial. Younger members of the family, raised amidst the shadows of tradition, now face a turbulent struggle with identity, caught between fierce loyalty to their home and the weight of a genetic inheritance they barely understand. Many find themselves at a crossroads. Anonymous online forums have become a refuge for these conflicted voices. Behind the safety of usernames and pixels, stories spill forth, tales of escape attempts, whispered rebellions, and quiet acts of defiance. Some share accounts of relatives disappearing after expressing doubt or challenging the family's code. Warnings ripple through these virtual spaces. Some doors, once opened, unleash darkness better left closed. The past is not dead, and the shadows it casts can reach far beyond the forested hills. One haunting tale circulates quietly among these online circles. The story of a young woman who tried to flee. She vanished into the night, only to be dragged back by unseen hands. Her fate swallowed by silence. Her story survives only as whispered rumors in rural taverns, passed from voice to voice like a ghost haunting the present. Her absence is a reminder that the legacy of this family is not confined to history books or digital archives. It is alive, a living force shaping lives, decisions and destinies. The balance between tradition and modernity, secrecy and exposure, loyalty and freedom is fragile and fraught. For some, DNA testing is a path to understanding, a way to break free. For others, it threatens to unravel everything they have ever known. As technology continues to pierce the shadows, the family story stands at the edge of transformation or collapse. Will the silence finally break? Or will the darkness pull tighter, swallowing all who dare to listen? Just when we begin to believe this tale is confined to a tragic, isolated family lost in the folds of time, a new layer emerges, far more disturbing and expansive than anyone dared imagine. An anonymous document, surfaced from the depths of obscurity, reveals that this family is but one thread in a much larger tapestry. This is no mere story of genetics and isolation. It is a calculated legacy, woven into the fabric of America's hidden power structures. The document outlines a shadowy pact among powerful bloodlines, families who have preserved their influence and status across centuries through secrecy, manipulation, and blood. The curse that binds this family is not simply biological. It is deliberate, a legacy consciously shaped and fiercely protected. The sealed envelope, weathered by time, bears an embossed emblem, a cryptic symbol known only to those within this clandestine network. Slowly, the envelope opens to reveal ancient papers, fragile, yellowed, filled with handwritten covenants, cryptic codes, and genealogical charts linking family after family. As we pan across a wall of faded, blurred family portraits spanning centuries, a haunting pattern emerges. Faces, some stern, some hollow, represent generations caught in this web of influence and silence. Each portrait is a reminder that this legacy reaches beyond a single name, a single place. The weight of this revelation presses heavily. The silence surrounding this family has always been more than shame or fear. It has been a safeguard for a shadow empire, a foundation of hidden power. What does this mean for the world outside their remote domain? Are we all unknowingly tethered to this legacy, its echoes rippling through the corridors of power and history? The answers remain buried deep in darkness, guarded, hidden, and fiercely protected. Yet the silence is beginning to crack. Whispers grow louder. Secrets, once buried, are clawing their way to the surface. This is not just their story anymore. It is ours, a legacy waiting to be confronted. If you thought you understood America, think again. These hidden bloodlines are not mere myths or forgotten legends. They are real. Their stories still unfolding in the shadows that cloak our history and our present. This is only the beginning. Subscribe and join us as we delve deeper, uncovering more untold truths lurking just beneath the surface. Because sometimes, the darkest secrets lie closest to home, and only those who dare to look will see what truly hides in the silence.